for many years, I owned, Town and Country Pharmacy in Ridgewood, New Jersey on East Ridgewood Avenue. Then we opened up a compounding pharmacy across from Mount Carmel Church. That we actually just ran out of space, and because of the, a lot of regulations that we follow to be one of the top 1% compounding pharmacies, we opened a new location here in Ramsey, which gives us a lot more room. And I guess I reminded me what Liz said about, everybody, on a journey and having, hormonal health or just good health. I always say, and Andrea's heard this a million times, but I always say in the United States, we say that we're in healthcare, but reality is that we're really in sick care. Our system is kind of designed to, that when the patient, whoever that might be, becomes sick, gets diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, that they're given a pharmaceutical medication to try to counteract the symptoms of the disease. So pharmacy, like myself, and Andrea is a compounding pharmacist also, we're what we call integrative pharmacists. So our belief is more that we can do things to try to, maintain our health so we can live a long, healthy life and, enjoy our senior years, that we work so hard to get to. So I guess you want to talk a little bit about a compounding pharmacy, Andrea?
Yeah, or you asked how we became passionate about hormones. I mean, this is just part of our business. My background, my whole career has been corporate, and part of my job was John, our pharmacy was actually a client of ours, and pharmacies from all over would call and send in hormone consults. So all these women go into pharmacies with all these problems, they fill out these sheets, and then they would send them to it was like a think tank. And then we'd go through all the symptoms and then give them suggestions of what to tell the doctor of how to help with their symptoms. So like this was the beginning, 25 years ago, I was doing this. Back then I had no idea how bad the symptoms really were. I was just telling people this is how you do it, and this is what you take to feel better. But then when you really get to perimenopause and menopause and you figure out, wow, I mean, this is, some people don't have any problem and they sail through menopause, and other people are miserable when they can't function. So, everybody has a very unique menopausal experience, and it's very rewarding to be able to help someone with their quality of life as they're going through that, because it can be very miserable. So, but first we found that a lot of people don't really know what a compounding pharmacy is. And so we like to give a little bit of a background. Sometimes if you go to CVS or Walgreens, all the drugs that you get there are made in a specific dose, in a specific dosage form, like a capsule, cream, suppository, or things like that. So we make medications that are customized for the individual patient. And usually you never need a compounding pharmacy until you have a problem. And then once you have a problem, you realize what a lifesaver this could be. I mean, like one of the big things, we do like allergies, we can make everything gluten-free or dairy-free. Sometimes a big one, like for pediatrics, babies, obviously they can't take pills. So we make things into liquids. We make injectable drugs that go into people's brains or spinal cord. So, I mean, we do all types of things. These are just some basic examples, but it's really customized medication when you have a problem beyond what you could get at a regular retail pharmacy. Yes. And so some general compounds, you might relate to some of these, but like pet medications, they need very specialized medications. We do eye drops for people when they have an infection. There's a situation where somebody might lose their eye if they don't get a compounded medication like within 24 hours. So like we basically save lives. You cannot do that when you go to CVS or Walgreens. We don't compete with them either. So this is just a different type of pharmacy that most people are not aware of. I think
a good example is the serum drops for extreme dry eye. Since we're talking about hormonal symptoms, a lot of women, when they go through menopause, it's a major complaint, the severe dry eye. And what we actually do in conjunction with Hackensack University Medical Center is patient goes there and they have their blood drawn, and then we get that patient's serum. And believe it or not, we make your own serum into an eye drop, and it's just been miraculous for helping people, with chronic dry eyes. It's really just using your own immune system to do what it was designed to do, as opposed to taking Restasis or one of the commercial products.
Yeah. So it's very rewarding to be able to help people with their problems that, a lot of times they just don't know where to turn. So, when we're going to give you a quick glimpse of a video that we're very proud of, and we're not going to watch the whole thing, but this kind of shows our environment.
Hi, I'm John Herr, pharmacist and owner of Town and Country Compounding Pharmacy in Ramsey, New Jersey.
We are located in northern New Jersey in the New York metro area. We serve patients locally and ship patients in multiple states. We are the trusted resource for doctors that need compounded medications made to the highest quality standards. We set the highest standards to ensure doctors and patients that the medication they get from our pharmacy will produce the best possible health outcome. For over 25 years, we have built deep expertise in the science of compounding. We have developed rigorous lab protocols and undergone the stringent PCAB ACHC accreditation for sterile and non-sterile compounding. Our accreditations place us in the top 1% of all compounding pharmacies.
So you can see, I mean, it's just we have labs. So if you were to come into our facility, it's not anything like a
It's
typical.
not greeting cards and candy and
Yeah.
over the counter medications.
Yeah. Whoops. Sorry. All right. Next slide. All right. So as far as compounding for men and women's health, we're going to go into hormones, but just to give you an example of things that we do for both men and women, a lot of it does revolve around hormones. So we do topical estrogen, vaginal estrogen, oral progesterone, thyroid, infertility drugs, topical testosterone for women, also like for sexual dysfunction. We do things, mood also.
Testosterone, a lot of people think it's only about, desire, but really it has a lot to do with our mood and anxiety, just our drive to get up and do the day. It's, it's really helped a lot of people get off of like SSRIs, like Prozac and things like that, because again, we're quick to give a commercial Prozac or, another type of antidepressant, when sometimes if you just restore the normal testosterone level.
And estrogen, actually, and
Sure.
progesterone, which we'll get into. As far as men, I mean, topical testosterone is a big thing that we do. And we do make a lot of things for erectile dysfunction, hair loss, and again, memory. There's so many compounds. We just tried to put a few that you might be able to relate to as we go through the presentation. So we're going to start with the simple man and hormones, because women, there's much more to talk about. And so you might be able to relate to this.
Yeah.
But so John will go ahead and talk about the most important, I guess.
Well, I always say, we talk to a lot of men, and a lot of men think that testosterone is all about, getting an erection or obtaining an erection. It really isn't. There's so much more to testosterone. And the problem is that, a normal testosterone range for a man is between 300 to 1,000 nanograms. And those levels drop as you age. And by the time, most men would like notice symptoms, they're going to go maybe to see their physician at that time, and they could, draw their blood, say they get a level of 400, and they would say, oh, your level is normal. But, if at age 40, that man normally had a level of 800, he's lost half of his testosterone. So I always try to tell people, if possible, like when you're, as a man, when you're in your, 40, early 40s, it's good to get a baseline testosterone level, so you kind of know what your normal is. And you can do that, at your doctor, or we even have home tests for that you can use for saliva, where you just collect your saliva and send it to the lab, and then we get the results and go over it with you.
The biggest thing, though, it is important to ask to get the testosterone tested, because a lot of traditional doctors, they won't offer it. And I bet, many of you could even say that your doctors haven't necessarily offered to test your hormones. It's just, it really depends on where you go. And so it's important that your significant others know to ask to get the level, especially at 50, because what happens when a man starts to lose testosterone, again, like John said, it's not about erectile dysfunction necessarily, but they're going to start to almost be depressed.
Yeah, it's that low energy, they become the couch potato, where they used to be an active person with an active lifestyle, mental and physical fatigue, the decrease in motivation. It's that central body fat that starts to appear. These are all the things that the men have when the testosterone levels goes down. Insomnia and sleep disturbances. So it's not just women with those. Depression, like I said, earlier, testosterone has a lot to do with that. Decreased sex drive, ED. And the thing, I do a lot of work with a lot of urologists, and like one of the interesting things is that erectile dysfunction is the first sign of heart disease in men. So that is the first sign of cardiovascular disease, because it's all about blood flow. And just like your heart, we need blood flow throughout the body to oxygenate our tissue and everything else. So it is a good warning sign to men that, you should get this checked.
Yeah. Because I mean, all of these things can lead to mild erectile dysfunction, but usually testosterone is not the main culprit.
Right. So, it's testosterone is commercially available from, a couple brands. You if you watch sports at all, you see we're advertising this all the time. But problem a lot of times is a lack of absorption. So we have special bases and special applicators that we use that make it easy for the man to dose the testosterone, or a woman can even dose her estrogen or progesterone using one of these applicators. For a man, we usually recommend applying it to the shoulder, in the morning. We have a base that really helps with the absorption through the skin to get a good blood level of the testosterone. So the commercial products, sometimes they might be as low as like 1% testosterone, which means you have to put on 10 mLs. Now 10 mLs doesn't sound like a lot.
Ooh.
That's 2 teaspoons, but it's like rubbing in 2 teaspoons of cream. And I think if a woman was using, just say like a face cream, for example, you would probably use 1/10 of a teaspoon to cover your face. So you think of that big amount, and it's a lot to put on. Often too, insurance companies will reject it because unfortunately insurance companies don't want to pay. They want to charge you a premium, but they don't want to pay for things for you. So like I said earlier, a normal range could be between 300 to 1,000. We'd like to see a man with a range, above 600. So, the insurance company might say, well, your range is 350. So, you're not covered. So then all of a sudden the commercial product could cost you $600-700, where, something that we compound is probably less than 100. Again, we try to say, be wary of telemedicine. A lot of people I think telemedicine is good, but there's a lot of people kind of taking advantage of people and getting them to, kind of log on to a quick 5-minute visit where, like I said, this is about maintaining your health. I think it's better to have a physician that understands this and can meet with you face to face and go over everything. So we have a lot of doctors that we know in the area, and actually, beyond just the Bergen County area. And, we're available as a resource if anybody is looking for a doctor for, for themselves or a loved one. Feel free to call us.
Yeah, and the advantage of getting compounded medications too. I mean, because again, usually you move on to compounds when something that's traditional doesn't work. But once you start any type of hormone replacement, it takes a lot of adjustment to find your perfect dose. So if you're sending your prescriptions into one of the big, huge mail order, we call them just the pill mills or whatever, that they don't really give the personalized service. You can't reach them on the phone. So, us being a local compound, we have a lot of experts with hormones here, and we really enjoy helping people, I guess, fix their problems. So.
Well, it's also something we have is available is, it's really just a men's health consultation. We have a questionnaire. A lot of times, I'll be referred to, a person who maybe, a man with diabetes or have prostate cancer or prostate problems. And oftentimes, they might have problems. And sometimes it's just good to talk to a pharmacist because we'll go over all your medications. And, a lot of medications may cause the side effects that you attribute to just being, part of the aging process or part of the problem that your major complaint is. So again, we can do these consultations with men and then reach out to their physician to kind of make recommendations for different therapies.
Oh, yeah.
We do have a men's health event on May 1st at 5:30 to 6:30. We have a doctor who's going to be here. Her name is Pam Smith. We just had one. She just wrote a book, Maximizing Your Hormones. Here we got a copy of the book. We have it available here. She did this for women's health. And we had an event here. We had a lot of women come to the event, and we had a lot of doctors in the evening come. And she gave a presentation to women and then to the doctors. And Dr. Smith is she's an internationally known speaker. She's one of the founders of A4M, which is integrative medicine. That's where physicians go to get certified in, like I said, integrative medicine or maintaining health. And now she just has her men's health book coming out. And she'll be coming here again to the pharmacy to do a presentation to, anybody who's interested, we hope the men come, or you got a free book, meet Dr. Smith. We know a lot of times we get a lot of more women when we have these types of events, but sometimes the women have to just push them in to go there and come to the event. But it's going to be, I think, a lot of good information for everybody.
Again, because it's proactive healthcare. So, okay, so we saved the more complicated for the rest of the presentation. Women have more hormones to deal with. They have more symptoms. They talk about them more. The symptoms are more severe. So first I want to talk about the hormonal phases of life. Premenopause is when you have regular periods or when you're menstruating. So it's your period of life before you have any perimenopausal symptoms, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then perimenopause is the 8 to 10 years before menopause. And that's when the problems start. And a lot of people don't realize, that the problems they start to have are perimenopause, but usually, you start to see like heavy bleeding, fibroids show up, irregular periods. Maybe the periods last, longer than 7 days. It becomes a little bit disruptive, but then you might have a few normal months. And then, so some people just, again, sail through perimenopause, maybe don't even have it. And then other people have a period of 10 years of thinking, oh my gosh, when is this going to end? And then that's the period of time where people might have to have ablations because their periods are so heavy, they can't be controlled. You'll also see doctors sometimes offer birth control pills during this age. And this is an age where you don't want birth control pills because oral synthetic estrogens will take over your cycle, which you need. You need something to take over your cycle to control the erratic hormones. But taking oral hormones, beyond like when, beyond, I guess, the fertility age can be, it's not good. There's a lot of information on progestins and synthetic estrogens. So it's not our choice. So there are ways to help with these symptoms by using natural hormones, or we call them bioidentical hormones. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
And I think because a lot of times, with men, we're talking about our testosterone level. With women, there's a big balance between a woman's estrogens and her progesterone. And when you hit that perimenopause time, that's where a lot of times your estrogen levels will remain normal, but you're losing your progesterone. So that's why you're becoming progesterone dominant. Estrogen dominant, and it's actually adding a little more progesterone will help balance you out.
Yeah. And then menopause is the end of female reproduction. That's when estrogen actually does start to decrease. In perimenopause, the estrogen is erratic and sometimes goes higher, even higher than you would be in premenopause. But the average age of menopause is 51. And so we'll take a look at this. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a great article in the New York Times, and it said women have been misled about hormones or about menopause. And it was a very long article, and I found it, and it actually, she has an audio of it, which is helpful, but I took a little clip of some, things that I could relate to. The symptoms were varied and intrusive. That is my experience. Some lost hours of sleep every night, disruptions that chipped away at their mood, their energy, the vast resources of goodwill that it takes to parent and to partner. One friend endured week-long stretches of such heavy menstrual bleeding that she had to miss work. Another friend was plagued by as many as 10 hot flashes a day. A third was so troubled by her flights of anger. Another felt a pervasive dryness in her skin, nails, throat, and eyes, as if she were slowly calcifying. These are common symptoms. And what has happened over the last 20 years is that doctors have been told we can't give women hormones. They cannot have hormone replacement because it will cause breast cancer, but that is so not true. And if you read through the article, it talks about all the flaws in the studies that caused this. But it's this generation of doctors, that's why they don't offer any, it's just like, I'm sorry, this is something you deal with, and that's what they've been taught, and that's all that they know. And hopefully there's going to be a trend to change that. But right now, a lot of the doctors are not necessarily open to even talking about the hormonal symptoms. It's just kind of,
they're not making the difference between a synthetic hormone and a, and your naturally occurring hormone. Like I always tell people, progesterone in Latin means to give life. Progesterone will never be higher in a woman's body than when she's pregnant. So giving somebody natural progesterone is not going to cause a problem, but giving somebody a synthetic progestin, which is really a chemical entity that was made by the pharmaceutical company in order to increase revenues, that is different than the progesterone that your body produced, or
Right.
your estrogens or
Right.
testosterone.
Those are the hormones that are in birth control pills that are not the same, that would take over your cycle. And again, here, we're not here to try to convince you to do hormones or not. It's just to let you know that if you are having symptoms and you're miserable and you need to do something, there are options, whether it be hormone replacement, whether it be trying to take supplements, which we do all. I mean, we recommend supplements for a lot of these things. And if somebody doesn't have symptoms, they probably don't need hormones, so it's really a personal choice. We just want people to know that there are options. So in perimenopause, the hormones are extremely erratic. The symptoms are erratic. And a common misconception is that you do need estrogen. A lot of women go, oh, I'm hormonal, or I have a lack of estrogen. But in this phase of life, it's the up and down of the hormones that's causing the problem. So you might see a lot of migraines. Again, that's what causes the heavy bleeding. And as John mentioned, that it's the progesterone dropping first that's the problem. So what we would do is use natural progesterone. So this is the same exact progesterone that's in your body. It's the same progesterone that we give for infertility to maintain pregnancy. So it is the exact chemical structure that's in your body. We use that as a powder and we compound it into different forms. So the most common form during this phase of life is to take an oral sustained release capsule at bedtime, which means it releases slowly throughout the night, which helps with sleep. One of the metabolites of it actually helps with sleep. So it helps get your hormones more in balance. And also, this is John didn't know we had the slide in here, I don't think, but this kind of shows what happens with estrogen and progesterone in a female. So if you notice at age 40 or 35, actually, that's when progesterone starts to drop and your estrogen is just slowly going down. So, but when progesterone suddenly drops, that's when you get a situation called estrogen dominance. And with estrogen dominance, you get weight gain, a lot of the problems that we talk about with typical symptoms. I mean, it can also cause hot flashes. I mean, it's not hot flashes like when you completely lose estrogen, but like every now and then people do have hot flashes. But really, the extra estrogen causes the heavy bleeding. It causes the headaches. It causes the weight gain. Causes changes in blood pressure. So there's so many things that can happen. And as you see, at 60, I mean, the progesterone, it's barely there. So a lot of doctors, don't necessarily even want to measure progesterone. So it's, it does help. It gives very good results. All right, with menopause, I already talked about the average age is 51. The true definition of menopause is when you have gone 12 consecutive months without a period. If not, you are still in perimenopause. But you can still, if you go 3 or 4 months without a period, then you're leading up to true menopause. Then people might start to give estrogen then, if necessary. So the common prescriptions that we would do with natural hormones or bioidentical hormones would be like a topical estrogen plus oral progesterone, or maybe topical estrogen plus topical progesterone, vaginal estrogen, topical testosterone. So these mean nothing to you right now, probably just giving you examples. And this shows what happens with estrogen. So you see, like at age 40, when you're in 35 to 40s, when you're still in perimenopause, you still have estrogen, and at 50, think about the average age of menopause is 51, but it can be, 43 to 58, it's very different. But when estrogen starts to drop, that's when the real symptoms kick in for people who are going to experience symptoms. All right, so the symptoms of menopause, there could be many, there could be none. The most invasive ones, which I have on the next slide, hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, insomnia too. The sleep disturbances affect the rest of your life, because what happens when you wake up with night sweats or hot flashes, or you can't get back to sleep, that affects your day. the next day, and it goes on and on and on for some people. And so it becomes a chronic issue that's just much more than just the hot flash you experience at that moment. So we want to try to get control of that before you go down a bad path. And again, you can do a lot of this with supplements too, just by balancing some hormones, diet, lifestyle. John likes to talk about, the exercise, eating right. All of this can help with the symptoms of menopause.
Yeah, I always tell people it's a package deal. It's not that you can just replace your hormones and then you can go, buy McDonald's and eat that and lay on the couch and watch TV. You have to eat a healthy diet, fresh fruits and vegetables, exercise, even if it's walking, going to the gym. I think I try to recommend to women a lot of times a little bit of some weight bearing exercise, very good for your bones. I mean, it's not that you're going to be a bodybuilder, but a little resistance training, is a good thing. But it's just trying to maintain your overall health and keeping it there as you go and age.
Yeah, and like some of these things that happen with menopause, I mean, if you can't fix them with hormones, because some things just happen with aging, like hair growth on the face, that is a common thing for women. Many women that are aging get this, and usually they go to the dermatologist or the cosmetic place to get laser, things like that. But there are formulas that we can make for that help with the hair growth. So the other thing is the vaginal problems like vaginal pain, infections, urinary tract infections, and then a very common thing that happens because of the lack of estrogen is recurrent bacterial and yeast infections. So all of a sudden you've never had a yeast infection and you get one. I mean, you haven't had one since you were, a young girl probably, and then you get one all of a sudden. That means the estrogen, it's throwing the pH off in the vaginal area. So by giving vaginal estrogen, you can help with that, but then we can also do things to adjust pH to make sure that the problem doesn't recur, because I can't tell you how many people have recurrent infections. It is just so hard to treat once you get them. So anyway. So here are the most disruptive physical symptoms of menopause. I mean, hot flashes, everybody knows about a hot flash. Weight gain is a huge one. I mean, 20 pounds is average for what happens. And you'll find as you start to go through menopause that it's very hard to lose weight. What you could have done 5 years ago doesn't seem to work as much. It's almost like you have to switch your diet and exercise plan. So
you still can't lose weight.
Yeah. So what's the point? Get McDonald's.
Yeah.
But the sleep disturbances too, getting to sleep is very important. And John, you can talk about cortisol and stress and how.
Well, yeah, I always mention, like we mentioned, the progesterone helps with sleep. I mean, if it's just the way like God designed the body, is that progesterone, as Andrea said, it actually converts to allopregnenolone, which is kind of like the same. It works on the same receptor like Valium would work on. But the reason that is when you're pregnant, you think of the umbilical cord to the fetus is like an intestinal tract. So that's where that progesterone converts to that, because it's actually keeping the fetus, quiet in utero. I mean, it's nice to feel the baby kick once in a while, but you wouldn't want that all day long when you were awake, the baby moving around. So that was the way our body was designed. So if you're having problems falling asleep when you're in perimenopause or menopause, that could be the lack of progesterone. If you can fall asleep, but then you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and can't get back to sleep, that can be cortisol. But it's interesting because it all goes hand in hand, because when, I always say stress is the biggest killer, in the world. And, stress can be internal or external. You could just had a bad day at work, that's an external stress. But as a woman goes through menopause or perimenopause, her hormones changing is stress. Having a disease is stress. So the hormonal changes will then affect her cortisol levels. So then all of a sudden she's starting to wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. Another indicator for that would be the abdominal weight gain. If you're getting overall weight, that's kind of more just going through the hormonal changes. But if it's that central weight in the abdomen, a lot of times we can blame that on cortisol. And it tends to be the chicken or the egg. And cortisol is fixed really with a lot of supplements and diet. So that's, something we talk about. And I just gave a whole presentation on that. It's
like an hour presentation in itself. Yeah. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. So estrogen in the brain, this is another one. A lot of women can't focus whenever they go through menopause. And this is an exact function of estrogen. And I mean, estrogen has like 400 functions in the body. It can't be that bad. You know, like we've had estrogen our whole lives. And when we lose it, you have to think about all the consequences that will happen if you don't replace it. So,
there's a lot of studies going on about the possible link of, low or no estrogen to Alzheimer's disease, also MS.
yeah. MS.
And it's interesting because like I always talk to people and I say, 10, 15 years ago, I think most women didn't realize they produce testosterone. Now, a woman produces little testosterone compared to a man, but I'm sure if I asked most of the men, they would never think that they produce estrogen, but they do. But as a man, we produce our estrogen from our testosterone, the bulk of it. So the bulk of our estrogen is produced from our testosterone, and men tend to hold on to their testosterone much later. Like Andrea said, the average age of going into menopause is like 51, but a man's testosterone level could be, it may have decreased as we know, the level's gone down, but it's not dropping dramatically like we see in a woman. So thereby, if a lot of people are looking into the fact that we see many more women with Alzheimer's disease, and especially at an earlier age, when men tend to get Alzheimer's disease, they tend to be much older. And we kind of think that can be the relationship of the estrogen to the Alzheimer's disease.
So back to that New York Times article. Yeah, I mean, it's imagine that a significant portion of the male population started regularly waking in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, a problem that endured for several years. Imagine those men stumbled to work, exhausted, their morale low, frequently tearing off their jackets or hoodies during meetings and excusing themselves to gulp for air by a window. Imagine that many of them suddenly found sex to be painful, that they were newly prone to urinary tract infections, with their penises becoming dry and irritable, even showing signs of what their doctor called atrophy, which is thinning. Imagine that many of the doctors had received little to no training on how to manage these symptoms. And when the subject arose, sometimes reassured their patients that this process was natural, as if this should be consolation enough. So this is what is going on. And many, many women are experiencing this, and they don't know what to do because they feel like the other bubble, the erratic, intrusive symptoms. So it's sad what is going on, but there are plenty of doctors that are willing to help. So we want you to know that they're, usually integrative doctors, some OBGYNs are willing, you just never know, but you have to ask.
Practitioners.
Yeah, nurse, a lot. Yeah. I mean, but in general, I think this is the overall feeling of what is going on in our healthcare system towards menopause. So usually when we get patients calling about symptoms, what to do and all of that, we would suggest if you have a doctor, then you ask, we can tell you what hormones to ask for or what to get tested, because that's billed by insurance. A lot of people will do the testing. The problem might be when the results come back, if they're going to give hormones or not, if you need them. The other thing is we mentioned these saliva testing kits, and these are at-home test kits where you can test all of your hormones, and it's not covered by insurance. It's, there's different prices depending on which ones you want, but with that, you fill out a hormone evaluation. And then all of this goes off to a lab where doctors will look at the results of your hormones and compare them to all your symptoms. And then they write up a very detailed suggestion and explanation of what's going on. They send that back to our pharmacy, and then with that we would set up a free 15-minute appointment with you to go over the results and with suggestions. So a lot of people do that, for some reason. Some people don't want to ask their doctor, or I don't know. I mean, there's many reasons to get a saliva test, but there's ways to do it. So that it's an option. We have all these barcodes,
That's one of our pharmacists, Jerry, that does a lot of the consults with women.
Yeah, Jerry does. She's had so many consults lately. But you can do consults by Zoom, come in, whatever. So it's just an option if you need help with hormones or need suggestions of what to do. Again, this is just what the
kit you just showed.
Yeah. And John talked about, again, when you have stress, either external or internal stress, such as your hormones changing, the cortisol levels are affected in the body. So when Dr. Smith came and talked to us, we have a clip, it's a very, She said, 75 to 90% of the visits to doctors are stress related, and chronic long-term stress leads to premature death. And so it is so important to control stress for so many reasons. And but how would you ever know you might feel stressed and all that, but how do you ever really know what your cortisol levels are? If you go to the doctor, like traditional or really any doctors, they're not going to test your cortisol unless they think you have a serious disease. It's Addison's, right? It's
there's two designations, Addison's and Cushing's. So one is basically lack of any production of cortisol. The other is overproduction.
But those are serious.
I mean, those are two big wide portions of the extremes, and then everything in the middle is considered normal.
Right. So you won't be able to go and ask for a blood test from the doctor. And plus, if you were to go to the doctor and get blood done, in order to know what's going on throughout the day with your cortisol, you would need to get at least 4 different tests. And that's not practical either. But like by the time you get to the doctor, let's say they booked you a morning appointment, I mean, you still have to get up in the morning and all that. So your cortisol is already going to be probably higher, than it would be right when you woke up. And so with these saliva testing, you can add cortisol onto the saliva testing kits, and you can we call it a 4-point test, where you test that 4 times a day. All you do is spit in a tube, and it's like an 8 a.m., noon, 5 p.m. and bedtime.
Well, yeah, the reason your cortisol should peak in the morning when you're getting up, and then gradually through the day is going to go down, and so you can relax at night, sleep, and then get up again. That's why when I mentioned like cortisol could be off if you're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, your cortisol might have been low during the day because your adrenal glands are not functioning correctly. So the body will try to overproduce or compensate, and it will start to produce excess cortisol at that 3 in the morning time period. And that's where the people are waking up, and it's just like, oh, I might as well just read a book or turn the TV on or get up and vacuum. I just, my mind is racing. I can't get back to sleep.
Yeah.
Other big symptoms that people will say is the binge eating, but it's typically cortisol what gives us our energy. So we'll tend to talk to people that they crave sugar or they crave salt, and again, inflammation. Now, since we're all, we're coming out of COVID. I mean, obviously it's still around. It's another discussion, but if you don't control inflammation, we know that, the problems with COVID are the inflammation, especially in the lungs. So controlling it is going to be important.
Okay, so here's some information probably deeper than you want to know. We can share this presentation later, but this is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Those are the main hormones that we replace in women. There's different types of estrogen. We usually use estradiol and estriol. Estriol is protective. It's breast cancer protective. There are many articles on that. So like, let's say you go to, let's say your doctor wants to give you estradiol. You can go to CVS or Walgreens. There's a patch of just estradiol, and it comes in, one strength, whatever. And that might work fine for you. That's great. The only thing you're missing is the cancer protective effect of estriol. So again, this is a non-traditional, this is more of an integrative type doctor thinking, where you would add estriol to your regimen. So this just kind of explains some of the positive effects of estrogen, talking about balancing with progesterone, and then testosterone, and testosterone obviously is also used in women. At women, we use it at minuscule doses. And yeah, and really, probably only 25% of women need testosterone. According to Dr. Smith, we see a lot of women get testosterone, but it's very, very low doses. You're not going to get hair, on your face or anything like that.
That's a good example too with the estriol, is that's the one we use a lot for women when they suffer vaginal dryness. Like I mentioned, that progesterone is the highest in a woman's body when she's pregnant. Estriol will peak in a woman's body just prior to term, just before you're going to deliver, because it increases, elasticity and lubrication in the vaginal canal so that you can deliver that baby. So again, when after you are entered menopause, if that is a problem, the best hormone to use is, instead of like Premarin vaginal cream, would be what your body actually produced naturally, which is estriol.
Yeah. All right. And then, we do bioidentical hormones. And so it just means that they are derived from soy or yam, but it is chemically converted to the exact chemical structure that's in the body. So it's too deep to go into as far as explaining different prescriptions, but we call them natural hormones, and we just do not use synthetic hormones at all for menopause, for hormone replacement at our pharmacy.
Yeah, this is how I became involved with hormone replacement or natural hormone replacement. I was working with a doctor who was one of the founders of bringing progesterone into our country. And then I found out at the time that she kept asking me, where do I get the progesterone powder from? I found out I was getting it from Upjohn, who at the time made Provera, and it was under patent. And I couldn't understand as a pharmacist, why would they be selling something that seemed to be in competition with the product they had made? So I was, fresh out of pharmacy school. When I found out what they did was they actually synthesized natural progesterone, which you can from a plant. But then instead of like making that into Provera and selling it to women, they couldn't patent it. So they chemically changed it and made it into medroxyprogesterone acetate. That was thereby patentable. Now they could charge whatever they want, but now they're giving something to the women that now we know causes blood clots, breast cancer, and all the other problems.
The problem is too, in those studies that caused everybody to stop using hormones, Provera, progestin, was treated as natural progesterone. I mean, they act like it's the same, but it's not. So it's the synthetic Provera or medroxyprogesterone acetate that is causing the problems. But anyway, and so we're not going to go through these. We're running short on time. And so DHEA and pregnenolone, these are actually over the counter. We have medical grade supplements, and a lot of people take these. They're precursors to a lot of the hormones. DHEA naturally decreases as you age. So if you get many doctors do test DHEA, and most people it's supposed to go lower as you age, but you want it to be not on the lower end of the range of normal.
And it'll be much lower during chronic stress also.
Yeah. All right, so options for symptom management. I think we just talked about that. You can come to Town and Country. We can help refer you to a doctor. Lifestyle, obviously, exercise, weight management, supplements. I think this is what, again, we could talk for an hour on supplements to help with different life problems. And then hormone replacement therapy is an option if you are suffering. And, these are just some of the issues that supplements can help support. So a lot of the same, just general menopausal and normal
heart health, blood sugar, everything.
Heart health. Yeah. Again, there's so many to go through, but there are very good supplements that can help with that. And then compounded hormone replacement therapy, we talked about that. And here is a QR code that leads you to our website that has more detailed information on it that Liz can share. And then we are having a women wellness and wine event. Wine is the least important, right? And we're going to go into a lot of detail of more of the hormones and try to get a group of women here to share some experiences. And we'll just talk about more of the supplements and, just more details of everything with a group of women. And it is $20 because we had to do that to plan on, but you get a $20 credit towards using supplements at our pharmacy. And we also have a newsletter that helps, we give a lot of information on integrative topics, and we would appreciate if you could stay in touch with us, subscribe to our newsletter, and Facebook, Instagram, follow us, all that. Liz, I hope we left enough time for questions if there are any.
Yeah, there's a couple, but maybe it would be best if you unshare your screen.
Okay.
Lots for us to think about. One of the first questions that many of us on this call are older, are already through the whole 9 yards. We're at the 50 plus. So if we've already lost, is there any point in replacing, any of the hormones? Because it sounded like when you showed the chart that naturally your body just decreases. So by the time you're 80, you just had your ankles filled with estrogen.
Yeah.
That was it.
Like, what I kind of say is like, because, we are still in the animal kingdom. We are animals, but now we've improved and we can live much longer. But really in the animal kingdom, once your reproductive years are over, then shows up, but we don't want to do that. So one of the reasons that we want to, maintain the hormones, not in an excessive level, but just in a maintaining level is to try to maintain that health. So, it, like I said, it can prevent Alzheimer's, can it prevent, heart disease. Heart disease is still the #1 killer of women. And that
Mhm.
could be that lack of estrogen. So these are the reasons that you want to take that.
So in other
may-
words, even if you've been through menopause without your estrogen for maybe even a decade, you're saying that you could begin to replace and it might improve issues that
You
you would
could,
have.
I mean, like estrogen,
maintaining your health. And
Yeah.
but one of
Okay.
the things I want to say is that, your estrogen went away, but your estrogen receptors did not. So there's a
Okay.
lot of chemical estrogens in the environment, particularly like plasticizers, like the plastic and everything we're trying to
Mhm.
get away from. So they can, like, there's what we call a phytoestrogen. A phyto
Mhm.
in Latin means plant, so that would be like herbs that a woman might take to help with menopausal symptoms. But then there's something called xenoestrogen. Xenoestrogen means chemical. So there's all these chemicals in our environment, and could those possibly interact with your estrogen receptor and maybe trigger a cancer? Maybe you have to have the gene for that. There's no 100% answer, but those are the reasons women will actually take a low dose of estrogen balanced with progesterone.
Okay.
and I think
Okay.
too, I mean, the best thing, like this book is so great, we don't get anything for selling it. It's just, like it explains so much about the studies and heart health and brain. Like I have a whole hour presentation that we recorded, Dr. Smith, Gabe recorded it for us, Dr. Smith's presentation, and it's geared towards physicians, but it goes through all the functions of estrogen in the body, and she said that she would give a patient that's 80 years old estrogen still.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And estrogen actually maintains bone. I mean, it builds bone. Wait, no, estrogen prevents loss.
Right.
Bone loss,
Of
Progesterone
right.
builds
and
bone.
progesterone builds bone. So like, you're always going to be losing bone if you don't replace the estrogen.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's super helpful. Another question that came through was, if these compounded items are not covered by insurance, what might be the average cost of some of the creams and the medications? Is that hard to
Probably
answer?
about, I'm going to say $60 to $80. And a lot of times we'll give patients even though they will reject, if we try to bill it, we give a direct reimbursement claim form. And a lot of times when the patient sends it in, then they get reimbursed.
Okay.
And here's the funny thing is that a few years ago, things are going crazy with the drug companies. And what happened is all of a sudden they decide they don't want to pay anymore. So for like the androgel, the men's testosterone, for a lot of the women, the patches, it's like all of a sudden they're at some tier where the price is way more than it would ever be to get a compound. Now we don't compete based off of price ever, because that's just not, I guess, we just don't, I mean, and, but our prices are naturally lower than what they're going to charge you if they reject it or consider it a higher tier. So that's
For your
what,
copay.
the copay.
And then, thank you, because it is helpful. A lot of the doctors too, I know there's some on the call who are patients of Dr. Pasteur,
Oh yeah.
but I don't know that she takes insurance. So, or not all insurances, but so sometimes it's hard when you have a predisposition for wanting to go in this route, but United Healthcare doesn't care.
Many of those doctors will build a labs, which can be very expensive. But
Okay.
then for their time, their cash, but they're going to spend an hour with you, going over.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's a
Yeah,
whole
that's a
different
different-
visit.
It's a whole
It's
different visit,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's great. I love Annalise.
But there are
Yeah.
doctors who will prescribe the hormones too, that you can go bill insurance, so
Yeah.
it's just a lot of work to try to find who's open-minded for that.
I know.
Mhm.
And you mentioned the thing about cortisol. There is a question about supplements that lower cortisol. But you had also, did you say something about high cortisol relating to high?
Well, it could be either way. Sometimes cortisol will initially go very high, but then eventually, if you leave it high long enough, it'll just kind of like burn out the adrenals and it'll go low. So if you have a high cortisol at night where you can't go to sleep, you can take phosphatidylserine. Usually
Gonna
100
have
to
to spell
300.
that. What's
Well,
that?
I think too, what John was talking about is the diurnal pattern of cortisol. So in the morning it's high, and then throughout the day it goes down. But like when you have an abnormal level, That's what he's saying. It could go up at night. And there are supplements called adaptogens that will adapt to if you have too high or too low. And so there's, you definitely you don't want to order off of
Okay.
Amazon or anything like that. You definitely would want to come in or, any type of professional setting and find out the different
A
options.
lot of times in the perimenopause, if you give somebody an adaptogenic herb, so adaptogenic herbs are used in every culture in the world. They all have different ones. There are things like ginseng, rhodiola, cordyceps, and we have different brands of those. That, and then coupled, if it's particularly just, that's a question I saw pop up, was the high cortisol. That's the phosphatidylserine, which
Okay, I can't.
it's a
I'm not
long one.
following
Yeah, I'm not
that.
even.
Yeah, it's
But
in a
you
lot of
would-
products too.
But that will lower that high cortisol. But then, getting back onto, people with, when they need to balance their adrenal glands, they need to have extra vitamins. So extra vitamin C, I'll often tell people take, 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day, because there's a lot of stress on the adrenals. Your body's going to burn up that C. B vitamins, particularly B5 or pantothenic acid. So that's again another supplement that you should take to help that the adrenal
He could
glands.
talk for an hour another time on stress.
Mhm. Well, I think a lot of us, we've experienced stress in greater, I guess greater numbers, and
Mhm.
then there's that sense that it imbalances everything, including the hormones, and so it's always so kind of this vicious cycle of hard to know. Because one of the questions had to do with cholesterol, if the cholesterol being high when the diet and lifestyle doesn't necessarily warrant it. Like, oh, I eat properly, I do this, I exercise, blah, 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 blah. Why would the cholesterol be high? And I think you were connecting it to the cortisol. I
Well,
think.
it can be more, and it could be testosterone, also, or low testosterone. Some people genetically will just produce more cholesterol. But I mean, cholesterol is still the building block to all of our hormones. So it's not that we don't want any cholesterol. We just don't want to have
Sure.
normally high levels of cholesterol. And
Or what they call
now when you go,
the so-called bad cholesterol versus the so-called.
yeah, you
good-
really have to get
yeah,
it fractionated when you go to your
Okay.
doctor, not
Okay.
just, oh, mine's 225, well, what was the good versus the bad? Obviously taking fish oil, for example, it's going to raise your HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it all kind of does interact, doesn't it?
Mhm.
So we have just a couple more minutes. Did anybody else have any other questions? Now's your great chance to get to ask.
I have a question. It's gonna
yes,
sound
ma'am.
dumb. I started premenopausal, I guess I stopped my cycle when I was 54 years old, and I got pregnant when I was going through perimenopause. How is that even possible?
Oh, you still ovulate.
You had a cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? The funny part of it is, it wasn't so funny. They would consider me almost like a high-risk pregnancy because
Yeah.
I was old. I was in my 40s when I got pregnant with my last child. And I just figured I stopped because I wasn't getting a period, but I had a surprise. It was a baby instead.
Yeah.
It was a surprise, little girl. But it is, so that is common. So you can actually still get pregnant even if you're perimenopause, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a period of 10 years.
Yeah.
It could be. Yeah.
It's just you could have like 3 or 4 or 5 months of anovulatory, no ovulation, cycles, and then you get that 1 month. You just happen to hit that one lucky month. I guess.
Yeah, she's 25 years old today. I should tell the story.
Yeah.
You could have easily had twins too, because
Yeah.
that happens a lot too. Once, when you miss ovulation, the next month, sometimes it gets more than one egg.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's
she was a
funny.
surprise to me, definitely. I thought I was just over my period. I thought that was the end of it. I just
No.
wasn't getting a period, but no, it was
Oh,
something else.
miracle baby. I think they call that a change of life baby.
Yeah.
So, there's been so much good information that you have given us, and remind us again, you're in Ramsey, New Jersey, right? And we can also access you online.
Mhm.
And do
TC
you do,
Compound,
okay, Town and Country,
tccompound.com.
compound.com. And it also sounded like you do consultations if people are looking for a physician. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, we can make recommendations. We know most of them here. Obviously we recommend Dr. Pasteur a lot, but we have
Okay.
a whole list of doctors, and you have to find the one that you get along with, because
Sure.
it is more,
Okay.
the integrative approach is more that one-on-one. It's not just, the doctor telling you what you have to do. They have to listen to you as a person, and so you have to have that rapport. And we
So-
also do consultations ourselves when we need to. We actually even have, some doctors and nurse practitioners that, are very open with this, but they'll refer the patient to like Jerry, our pharmacist, Jerry Becker, and then she'll do the consultation and collaborate with that doctor or nurse practitioner on a therapy to begin with. So we do that, or we do the same with men with, problems with, men's health.
Yeah, and like with the female consultations, there's two ways to get a consultation. You can either fill out the online form and there's a fee for her sitting down, because it usually takes an hour, or you can do a saliva test and do the consultation once we get the results back, and then that's free. That's like a 15-minute, but that comes after the saliva testing company has given a lot of their recommendations. And then what happens is, based off of our recommendations, we can either contact the doctor and talk about prescriptions back and forth, or if you need a doctor, then we can refer you to one. So it's
okay,
a lot of,
okay.
they let
Mhm.
us decide, a starting point, and then we do a lot of adjusting with doses too, because again, it can take 3, 4, 5 months to find the perfect dose. That's the problem too with regular medicine, traditional medicine, is it comes in one strength, and if that is not the dose you need, then you don't feel perfect, then there's no way to adjust. With this, we will adjust up and down and the balance until we get you as good as you can get.
I would say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like most pharmaceutical medications come in 3 or 4 strengths. Imagine if shoes only came in 3 or 4 sizes.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very helpful to understand how that works and that there's a nuance to it. Well, so much good information. Thank you so much for your time. Friends, if you have more questions, please reach out. We can connect you, make sure that you guys get connected. You've been generous with your time and we really appreciate it. And to our friends here, as you go from this space, it's always our wish that you be well. And we hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the
Thank-
invite.
Bye.